Welcome back. We continue the conversation with political strategist Haroun Mir from Kabul. From Boston, Peter Galbraith. He is the former United Nations Deputy Special Representative for Afghanistan. And with me on set is former senior U.S. intelligence officer, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Haroun Mir, let's go back to Kabul. Is the government there talking to the Taliban right now?
Well, yes, indeed. Unfortunately, the peace process started by President Karzai stalled and did not move forward. And the new president, President Ghani, is fully aware that the ultimate solution for Afghanistan will be a political solution. And we all are aware that by military means we could not defeat the Taliban. And so why he made his first trip to Saudi Arabia, and after Saudi Arabia he went to China. He's also going in a few days to Pakistan, and he wants to build pressure on Pakistan through its important allies such as Saudi Arabia and China, which these countries have a lot of leverage over Pakistan. And the Pakistanis have been sending positive signals. We have received VIP visits from Pakistan in the past few days, and there is a window of opportunity this time for a true negotiation between the Afghan government and the Taliban. And we need also the support of other regional countries such as Qatar and other Gulf countries, because the Qatar process was unfortunately stopped by President Karzai, and now there is an opportunity to restart negotiation with the Taliban. And so why President Ghani is very keen, and he has said that in the beginning during his inauguration speech that he will do everything possible to reach out to the Taliban in order to convince them that war is not a solution for Afghanistan.
Ambassador Galbraith, when we look at stabilizing Afghanistan and a role for neighboring countries or regional powers over there, is it time for the United States perhaps to get tough with Pakistan to say, look, we're pouring billions of dollars into your country, we're not getting much in terms of a return on that investment as far as Afghanistan is concerned?
Well, it's an interesting point. We've developed this close relationship with Pakistan. We've put a lot of money into it, and yet Pakistan is the country that is, or at least elements in Pakistan, are the ones that are supporting the Taliban. We have a hostile relationship with Iran, and yet Iran has largely been supportive of the same goals as the United States. Was, among other things, providing cash directly to Hamid Karzai. The trouble with dealing with Pakistan is, well, the first problem is whatever you agree to, and this is the problem with having a Northern Ireland kind of process there, it doesn't mean that either the Pakistani government or at least elements in Pakistan will honor the agreement. So even if the government says one thing, perhaps sincerely, elements within the inter-services intelligence who are really running the show may well continue to do their own thing. I also think that President Ghani is pursuing, as Haroun Mir said, actually the right approach. He's gone, maybe there's a certain time for the U.S. to stand back from the peace process. He's gone to China, to Saudi Arabia. These are very important countries to Pakistan, and he's talking directly to the Pakistanis, and he has some credibility here. Pakistan very much did not want Abdullah to be the president. They didn't want a Tajik or somebody seen as a Tajik, so they were much happier with Ashraf Ghani. So he has some room for maneuver, and it may be a process that is led by Ashraf Ghani, by the Afghans, might have more promise than a U.S.-led process. I don't know. I mean, yes, on the one hand, we should get tough with Pakistan, but the other side of the coin is we've been saying that for a long time, 30 years, and the Pakistanis just haven't taken us seriously.
And Tony, the other problem, which Ambassador Galbraith just pointed out, is that you might deal with Pakistan, but the government in Islamabad does not represent all of Pakistan. It does not speak with one voice, does it?
Inevitably, that's absolutely correct. And that's part of what we've recognized as working our track, too, is that you have to look at this as a multi-pronged challenge. You cannot simply go to the central government and ask them to do things. You have governors of districts, which are another level. A while back, they asked for the return of a CIA operative who was captured to the central government. The government said, you go talk to the governor. We can't help. So there's really that complexity, as well as the duplicity of certain elements, as the ambassador said, of the ISI. There's ways of dealing with that, sometimes harsh, sometimes not so harsh, perhaps, through economic incentives. But the idea is we need to be more serious. Plus, we have to be honest about the Indian equation here, too. The biggest concern many of us have, I have in particular, is the nuclear equation between Pakistan and India. And ultimately, I believe in many ways our being in Afghanistan helps stabilize the region to a certain extent. Now that we're gone, obviously, the inherent conflict between the Indians and Pakistanis may well pick up. As a matter of fact, some scenarios we've looked at in war games may indicate that there's a potential within the next 5 years of an enhanced return of friction between the two nations. So this is another thing we must understand, that it's not simply about the Taliban. The Taliban are linked to the ISI is linked to any number of other entities, and then there's always this larger nuclear equation that's sitting there that we have not fully addressed, but must be very concerned with. Obviously, not only that, the loose nukes issue, but the fact Pakistan has over 100 nuclear warheads out there somewhere. So we have to be very cognizant of that fact.
Haroun Mir, when we look at the last 13 years and you look at life in Afghanistan, has it changed for ordinary Afghans when we look at the rights that women enjoy in Afghanistan, schooling for young children? There's just been a book out by the journalist Anand Gopal, and he says that Afghanistan remains the worst place one of the worst places in the world for women, and that in many instances there have been setbacks so far as education is concerned. What's changed?
Well, I've been living in this country for the past, say, 20 years. I've been living in this country during this civil war in the 1990s, and I also witnessed the life under the Taliban and how difficult life was for all Afghans. And we have seen tremendous changes in this country in the past 13 years. And sometimes when we look back, we say, well, this is not the same country. It's women's rights is something that were fully, totally unaware of it in this country, and now we have women that are having important positions in the Afghan government. Women are also active in the private sector, in businesses in Afghanistan, and particularly in education and healthcare. So these are tremendous changes in Afghanistan, and also in terms of economy. So our economy moved out of below zero. Now we are we still need the support of the international community, but we are moving forward. And also in terms of education for young Afghans, this is tremendous. I remember in 1996, 1997, we could not find anyone being able to translate a conversation with foreign journalists. And today, when you walk in the streets of Kabul, if you talk to people, they could respond in quite good English. So these are tremendous achievements in Afghanistan. We recognize that these achievements were not possible without the support of the international community. And so we are hopeful that with the commitment for another decade, all these changes in Afghanistan will become irreversible. And this is why we are hoping that this fragile situation will move towards a situation where everything will become sustainable.
Ambassador Galbraith, from a U.S. perspective, what did 13 years of war achieve in Afghanistan?
Well, of course, we went into Afghanistan to get rid of al-Qaeda and to remove the Taliban. And we actually had accomplished those goals by December of 2001. Al-Qaeda was gone, the Taliban was out of power, and we had done it by working with local partners, the Northern Alliance. We then changed the goalposts to engage in a massive exercise in nation building, building a strong central government in a country that never had one, building an Afghan army in a country where people had a long tradition of being effective fighters, but we wanted to build it our way. It's been an incredibly expensive undertaking, and it has had very limited results. So a lot of it has fueled corruption. But it's also true what Haroun Mir says is that in the 13 years, almost despite of what we were doing, Afghanistan has evolved. Kabul's gone from a city of perhaps 1 million to a city of 5 million. The internet's come, many more automobiles, cell phones. I remember in 2009 being up in Daikundi, one of the most remote provinces of Afghanistan, looking at a women's project, rural women, and there they were. They had their cell phones, and they knew how to use every part of them, even though they were illiterate, had much more skill on them than I have ever had on a cell phone. So the country has changed, but I think the way we went around about it to try and impose our vision of what Afghanistan should be has been a very costly and largely unsuccessful enterprise.
Tony, you want to respond to that?
I agree with the ambassador. As much as I'd like to believe that the investment will pay off, I just don't think it will. There's a couple of issues that go with that. First off, we did defeat the Taliban in 42 days, and I agree with Haroun Mir. It was oppressive under the Taliban. When I was there in early 2000s, the Taliban had nationalized every car. Every car was painted white and yellow. It was a Taliban taxi, is what we called about it. So clearly we were there as liberators and did it in 42 days. We then transitioned into this, after 2003, I did a book, Operation Dark Heart. We talk about the tipping point where we went from this anti-terror mission, helping the Afghans pick their way forward, to this idea that we know better than you. We're going to give you this whole governance in the form of counterinsurgency. So I think that's where we really went off the tracks between 2003, 2004. We made some huge mistakes, huge assumptions that we could essentially bring democracy to the people of Afghanistan, who have a tradition of decentralized governance. And I've always said the people of Afghanistan are not ungoverned, they're self-governed. They're the ultimate version of small tribal groups doing their own thing. I'd like to believe the technology and some of the concepts we've introduced will continue to help the country become more cohesive. That's a long-term process. It's going to take decades, if not 100 years, to actually see through. With that said, I'm hopeful by the current leadership that we'll see progress.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for joining us. And that's all we have time for in this discussion, but the conversation continues online. To comment on this or any other show, you can reach the Heat team by emailing theheat@cctv-america.com, or you can chat with us on Twitter @cctv_America. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.